Hello, my name is Joe. If you want more details, you're gonna have to go and watch the first video on this channel, because that'll tell you all you need to know about who I am and how I got here. But anyway, I think it's important to note that I've decided to name my videos instead of simply numbering them. I'm not sure why I've done this. I guess it just helps me to keep track of my memories, but I'm not completely sure. I've entitled this one The Glass Man, for reasons that you will discover as I tell my tale. Another thing I feel I should mention about my experiences here is that once I enter the door, the experience becomes almost dreamlike. By this I mean that when it begins, I have no recollection of the caravan or that there is anything strange about to happen to me. So even though I have no idea how I ended up in my current position, it seems normal that way. So this time I found myself alone, in a street. It was dark. The wind shook the trees very slightly, and they whispered quietly to each other as I passed. I was going to see a friend of mine, Luke. He had invited me to his house to celebrate the last day of term and that there would be no more school days for another 2 weeks. However, as I approached his street, I noticed something odd. It looked different, like something was missing. As I got closer, I realized what was wrong. His house was in ruins. There was a large gap between the two houses, and in the middle was a charred wreck. The entirety of the top floor was gone, and what was left was crumbling right before my eyes. Instantly I began to run towards it, wondering if Luke was okay and why there were no fire trucks or ambulances on the scene. Just as I reached the house, I heard a sound from the bushes to my right. I tensed up, turning to see Luke crawl from his hiding place between the dense undergrowth. I tried to ask him what happened, but he said he couldn't explain here and grabbed my arm. Suddenly, we were running. I tried to ask what we were running from or to, but he simply told me to keep running. Every few meters he would look behind him as though expecting to be followed. I was confused. Eventually, he seemed satisfied that whatever it was had gone, and spotting a small wooden bus stop, he dragged me with him into the shelter. Inside was dark, and the only light came from the moon, and danced eerily on the wall. Gasping for breath, I sat with my back against the wooden walls, looking up at him in wonder. I asked him why we had run so urgently and what happened to his house. He too sat, and after a long pause, in which we both got our breath back, he replied with 3 words: "The Glass Man." I frowned and asked him what on earth he was talking about, but all he would say was that the Glass Man had found him. That was all I could get out of him, except for the fact that it had been the Glass Man who had destroyed his home. He burnt everything, he began. Killed everyone. His eyes. That was all I could get out of him. As he continued to mutter to himself anxiously, I stood and surveyed the surrounding streets through the tiny glass window. I swept the immediate view, but could see nothing out of the ordinary. However, as I turned back to Luke, his expression chilled me to the bone. Even in the dim light, I could see that he had gone white. His eyes were wide and staring at the point just behind me. I froze, dread seeping through me as I wondered what he was staring at. Slowly, fearfully, I began to turn. As I saw what was behind me, I screamed. The face at the window was oddly shaped, mask-like, almost inhuman. Its shoulder-length hair was matted and tangled together, and its eyes, they were grey, blank and colourless, yet they seemed to stare at me. The next thing I knew, all the windows in the bus stop had shattered. I jumped slightly. Then again, as I felt Luke's hand on my arm, he pulled me away out of the bus shelter and into the night once more. As I looked behind us, I saw the figure again. It seemed to follow us. However, it didn't walk. It just stood still, but continued to advance. It would appear, it would disappear from one spot and then instantly reappear closer to us, like a video skipping. Its head began to twitch and shake at such a speed that its features became a blur. Yet I could still feel its hollow eyes watching us as it followed. No matter how fast we ran, it was faster. It got closer and closer. I was growing exhausted and knew I couldn't run for much longer. This was the least of my worries, however, as the creature was now only meters away. Then suddenly, it disappeared altogether. I yelled at Luke to stop, but he wouldn't. His attempts to outrun the creature were useless, as it appeared before us in the road. We tried to pull to a halt, but despite his efforts, Luke ran straight into the creature. I felt his hand leave my arm. At the same moment, the creature disappeared. Somehow I knew it wouldn't return. Luke was now on the floor, face down. I couldn't see his body rising and falling, and realized he wasn't breathing. Turning him over and almost falling backwards in horror as I saw what had happened to his face. It had begun to decay at an alarming speed. His skull was beginning to show through his rotted flesh. The rest of his body followed suit, as his eyes turned to sludge, which ran down his face. As I continued to watch, I frowned as I noticed the color of his bones was changing. It was turning a bluish green and became smoother. I stood once more and stared as the last of the flesh rotted away, leaving only a skeleton made completely of glass. I don't recall how I found my way back to the caravan, just that I'm here now. I don't want to go through the door again. It was horrible. But I guess I have to, if I want to have any chance of ever escaping this godforsaken prison.